Hey everybody, it is Dak here from the Ed Boys, and today we're checking out Jagex's new player guide. Now, it's considered a new player guide, but even if you have hundreds, maybe thousands of hours in this game, there's a very good chance there's some information in this guide that you didn't already know. There's a lot of things in old school RuneScape aren't necessarily very intuitive. There's a lot of little mechanics that maybe aren't so obvious just from looking at it in the first place. And overall, this guide has a lot of information about little details that you generally should know while playing old school RuneScape. Now, there are 3 sections that you can check out. We have the combat section, the setup and settings, as well as the what do I do in old school RuneScape. I'll briefly check out these other 2 after we go over combat. Most of my videos recently, though, have been about bossing and bossing guides, stuff like that, so I feel like these are good basics to go over right now. The very first thing in this combat guide just starts talking about ticks. I do have a full video that discusses ticks pretty in depth, but if we go ahead and click start on this metronome, you'll hear the pace of a tick, the 100 beats per minute. The game runs on what we like to call ticks. Every 0.6 seconds, information is sent between you and our servers, keeping the character up to date on what you're doing. 0.6 sounds like a lot more intimidating than just 100 beats per minute. This is the core of understanding old school from your early levels all the way to endgame, and while it's not essential to grasp straight away, it's a good thing to keep in mind while you're starting your journey. This is actually a very important part of it. You could spend a lot of time in old school RuneScape having no idea what a tick is and be fine. You do so much leveling, so many quests, even a lot of bossing, you don't really need to know what a tick is. But once you get to higher level things and you see that some good players make things look really easy that you may be confused about, in a lot of cases that really just comes down to having a good understanding of the rhythm of ticks. While you can do most things within a tick, sometimes if your mouse clicks are fast enough, you can perform multiple actions in just one single tick. The example they show here is how you can combo eat. So yeah, if we were to go to take a bunch of manta rays, some very expensive manta rays nowadays, and try to eat them just a bunch in a row, you'll notice it takes a while, a few ticks in between each manta ray that my character eats. But if I really quickly click on a manta ray, a Ceradoan brew, and a Karambwan in that order, you'll notice that my character manages to do all 3 just in one tick. How damage is dealt. At its very core, behind the scenes, you're rolling invisible dice, just like Dungeons and Dragons, to see how much damage that you're going to do to the enemy, but this is dependent on a few things. You have your accuracy type, NPC defensive stat, so if you use a slash attack, it'll roll your accuracy based on your opponent's slash defense. You have your total strength, which increases your max hit. Your activated prayers, your opponent could have overhead prayers, you could have prayers on that are offensive as well. Any vulnerabilities like elemental weaknesses, and then any immunities like poison resistance and venom and whatnot. If you have a weapon that can poison a monster, some monsters just can't be poisoned, so it won't do it. All of these factor into how much damage, or if you're going to do any damage at all. Most important being accuracy, how likely you are to hit, and strength, how hard you can hit. This really is the case for all 3 combat styles. A lot of it comes down to accuracy and strength, and then I'll toss in the speed of your weapon obviously matters for doing damage as well. They show some different hit splats here, regular damage, no damage, poison, venom, disease, shield, and burn. It's good to know the difference between these, I guess, but it doesn't necessarily make that big of a difference. If you were colorblind and you just saw a black hit splat for all of them, you're gonna be fine. You just see the number on it and you're attacking, you're doing good. Did you know at level 42 magic for alright, this is telling you about using Monster Inspect, technically a really cool spell. Honestly though, just use the OSRS wiki if you want to know the stats of a monster. Let's take a look at how each of your combat skills affect combat. So with attack, you get more accuracy and you can also wield stronger weapons. With strength, you get a higher max hit, and in some cases, it helps for stronger melee weapons. This was something that I didn't know as much when I started playing as a kid. It was pretty obvious when something had an attack or a strength level requirement, but what exactly attack and strength were doing to make my damage any better, I didn't really realize. Strength is for max hit, attack is for accuracy. And then, of course, defense, it increases your chance of avoiding damage, just a better chance that whatever you're getting attacked by hits a 0. Leveling up range increases your range, damage, and accuracy, so it's kind of like attack and strength for range are just in the one skill. Magic unlocks combat and utility spells. Magic arguably is the most helpful of all these skills just because of how many different spells you get. And if you look closely, it says here, increases your chance to avoid magic attacks. So having a higher magic level actually affects your magic defense as well. Higher hit points gives you more health/HP. There are also some foods in the game that heal more hit points when you have a higher hit points level, like anglerfish. And then prayer unlocks temporary combat aids, kind of like the mana for old school RuneScape. Your total prayer points are based on your skill level, so having a higher prayer level means more prayer points, but also you get more prayer points back when you drink a prayer potion if you have higher prayer level. As you go through the world, you'll passively train these skills by fighting NPCs with different weapons and styles, and this tab's your best friend while doing so. So here in the combat options tab, they show like your combat level. They talk about auto retaliate. This is kind of a big one here. Is we recommend fighting bosses or exploring new areas with this feature off. In general, auto retaliate should be off like 98% of the time. I think a better visual for this panel would be to actually show you what your combat option panel looks like, and they're basically just showing that from here you can change the style of your weapon or like the style of combat of what you're currently wielding. When hover overing those options, it shows the different styles and gives you an idea of what XP you can get from those. Different style of attack can be pretty important. So for melee, there's stab, slash, and crush. Some monsters, like melee is a good option, but they're specifically weak to crush. So if you were using like a long sword or a battle axe or maybe even a dagger, you're actually not going to be doing as much as if you're using like the mace, a warhammer, or just a mace again. What is this? What about when you're slinging arrows with range? Slinging arrows kind of sounds like a drug dealing situation. All range options give range experience, but there's some key differences. The names of the boxes, accurate, rapid, and long range, are actually the same across all range weapons, but each of them have a more obvious difference. When you're using accurate, you get a +3 invisible boost to your range level, giving you some more accuracy and strength. On rapid, you'll be attacking 1 tick faster. It says right here, you'll almost always use this option. It's very true. Rapid is the best for range, like 99% of the time. And then on long range, you do get a +3 bonus to your defense level. You'll have extended range, so you can stand further back, and it will also split your XP between range and defense XP. Here's some information where if you played RuneScape back in the day and you only came back recently, you might not know that they added this. There are 3 different styles of range damage. You have light, standard, and heavy range. This is just like having slash, stab, and crush when fighting an opponent. Like some things are going to be weak to light range instead of heavy range, so you're better off using knives instead of crossbows on those monsters. To know exactly what a specific monster is weak to, you could use that monster examine spell like they talked about before, or you could just go to the OSRS wiki, check out the monster's stats here, and you're just looking at like whichever of these numbers in their defensive stats is the lowest number, that's what they're weak to. Finally, if you want to blast some foos, who typed this, dude? Who typed this? Some powerful magic spells. Let's talk magic. This is one of the most diverse combat skills, as you not only have an option of combat spells, you have plenty of support and utility variants too. Yeah, magic is huge. You get combat spells, you get teleporting, utility spells. These are some good ones here. Mostly like High Alch is pretty big. The Lunar Spellbook has a ton of different utility spells that are really cool. You do get different types of casting with regular magic casting and defensive casting. For the most part, like pretty rarely use defensive casting. It's kind of a waste of runes a little bit to get defense XP out of them, but it's not that big of a deal. And then for magic, you actually have 4 weaknesses. Unlike the other 2 combat styles, there's a weakness to each element. Honestly, these are more for kind of mid-level, low-level stuff. Like Barrow's brothers are a bit of a boss, like a mini-game boss, so they can be somewhat high-level monsters, have these weaknesses, but like the end game bosses don't really use magic weaknesses at all. This is mostly for like mid-tier weaponry to be able to get some more damage at some of these things. This next tab, we have prayer. Prayer is one of the most important things in the game. Activating any prayers from your prayer tab drains your prayer points, and once you have 0, you won't be able to use it until you recharge them at an altar or with prayer restoration items. The utility that the prayer skill provides is one of the most useful features of combat, as it can provide buffs to help boost your stats, keep items on death, and most importantly, protect against attacks. Offensive prayers are very powerful, like the ones that they're showing in this top row here, but yeah, definitely level 43 prayer to get these overheads, to get all 3 overhead prayers. This is like one of the most important parts of combat. This is probably the most important part of combat. All right, we're gonna take a check at Brucifer's guide here. He made it a very, very solid graphic that has a lot of information about combat. Let's go over this. Starting at level 0, fresh off Tutorial Island. Each time you attack, your character performs an invisible accuracy roll against your enemy's defense. If successful, then you roll for damage between 1 and your max hit. If failed, you hit a 0. If you played games like D&D, this should feel pretty familiar. Melee is unique in this regard, as the accuracy and damage rolls are determined by 2 skills, your attack and strength. And we were saying before, range gives you both range, accuracy, and strength, and then magic level gives you both magic damage and strength, kind of depending on what spell you're using. Food is your primary means of healing in old school RuneScape. Eating mid-combat will delay your next attack. Eventually, you can start to use potions for damage boost, stat restoration, concentration, and more, and potions do not delay your attacks. This is a tab that a lot of new players or even experienced players don't really check out much. Your equipment stats, like all this information can be found in-game, like how your current setup is looking. I also highly suggest just using a DPS calc to figure out your best setup, which I have one linked in the description. Now we move on to level 1, the basics. Prayer is often considered the 4th combat skill. You can expend your prayer points to boost your offense, defense, and more. You can also restore prayer points at an altar or with prayer potions. Here's a look at the combat triangle. This is fairly important at times. Melee beats range beats magic, and magic beats melee. Shows here we have the 3 different range attack styles, 4 different magic attack styles. We scroll down a little bit. We have crush, slash, and stab for melee. And a couple of tips here. When ranging, it's almost always best to be on the rapid attack style, for sure. You can auto cast magic spells when holding a staff, for sure. And melee weapons with attack speed of 4, like scimitars and maces, tend to perform very well. Yeah, if you ever notice, people always tell you to get like the rune scimitar or the dragon scimitar when you're training. Like, why not like the longsword or the dagger or whatnot? Like, no, scimitars are kind of day way. Here's an interesting note. Also note that the true weaknesses may further depend on sub-style. This is talking about like slash and like different types of elements and whatnot. Fiery foes like dragons and demons typically take significantly more damage from water spells, makes sense, but then crush weapons have greater accuracy against skeletons and large insects. I guess technically I knew this, but I didn't really know that. Like, I know that Vedian, big skeleton, weak to crush, Venonanus, big spider, weak to crush, and Calphi Queen, big bug, weak to crush, but I didn't really put together, yeah, I guess skeletons and insects, weak to crush. Many consider level 43 prayer to be where combat truly begins, as this grants access to protection prayers, also known as overheads. These mitigate 100% of incoming damage from a corresponding style, with some exceptions. This may sound absolutely ludicrous if you're used to other games, and in a sense, it is. However, you'll soon learn that OSRS is very well balanced around this idea. This is very true. The overheads are just absolutely overpowered. I've brought that up a few times while streaming. Like, has anyone noticed just how absurdly broken these are? But at the same time, like, if you didn't have them, there's a lot of bosses that would just be impossible to fight. Like, it is balanced around it very well. If all of that seems fairly simple, that's because it is. But believe me when I say that this well goes very, very deep. The beauty of OSRS is in the sheer breadth between how low the skill floor is and how disgustingly high the skill ceiling is. Looking to step things up, check out these bosses. They're intentionally designed to help newer players ease more into advanced mechanics. I do highly suggest checking out Scurious somewhat early. Huicoatl, Royal Titans, and Moons of Peril, those are all fantastic options. I would shout out the Amoxliotl as well. Those are all like beginner bosses that they don't punish you too hard if you mess up. Like, you're not just gonna get one hit, and they will help you practice high-level mechanics. Unsure what your goals should be? Here's a few landmark gear upgrades every early to mid-game account should work towards. All 3 of these are solid. Animal Magnetism to get your Ava's devices, Fight Caves to get your Fire Cape, beating Jad for the first time, huge for every account, and then also getting Recipe for Disaster done for those Barrow's Gloves. That seems like a bit of a long grind, 175 quest points, but they are very worth getting. Mastered the basics, question mark? The following are more advanced concepts, but they're things that you should learn as you progress into higher level PVM. You got Caramboans and combo eating, which I do have a whole video on that should be linked in the description. You have prayer flicking, which honestly prayer flicking sounds more complicated than it is, but prayer flicking is pretty important at high levels. Just basically being able to click on different prayers and like protect from multiple things, or turn your prayer off when you're not using it. Learning about the true tile and the intricacies of movement. This is a very big part of the game. People don't understand, like, your character moves 2 squares at a time. It takes like till the next tick before your character starts moving after you click, and then your character doesn't actually visually look like he's on the square that he's on because of animation delay. And most importantly, the tick system. This is another one that I have a video on that discusses ticks a little bit more in depth, which will be linked in the description. Ticks are definitely the most important part of the game. Once you've got a sense for this, I promise you're capable of doing almost anything in the game. You'll also understand why people say that OSRS is a rhythm game in disguise. It truly is. The new player guide is not all about combat. There is a setup guide that shows, like, talks about rune light, shows you how Iron Man mode is, gives you an idea of, like, well, shows you the wiki, how to use your chat box, mini map, the world map. This is something that I don't discuss too heavily in my videos too often, because I guess I just kind of expect people to know how to use the world map by the time they're looking up a bossing guide, but this is all good information to have. You have your data orbs. These are all definitely more beginner type things. Your control panel, like just how to check your envy and stuff. I will say having the term control panel to work with is kind of nice too, I guess, for trying to navigate, tell somebody where to go to find an option. The list of recommended settings in here is pretty sweet. Like, just the second one on here is to turn on your hide roofs, which is awesome. Tells you to turn on like your shift click, turn on PK, skull prevention, all sorts of stuff. Very good for beginners. And then some tips and tricks in here, like second screen goodness. This is totally a second screen rhythm game that we're overall playing. And then if we check out the what do I do in old school RuneScape, it's just got a lot of information about general progression, like goals you can set, skills and whatnot, quests are in here, all sorts of different things like that. There's a lot of information if you click here, like initial goals, gives you some stuff to work on, longer term goals like fairy rings, dragon defender. This is all great stuff for like getting started in old school RuneScape for sure. And then overall the combat guide, I would say, is not only for getting started, but if you're like mid to high level and you're trying to get more of an understanding of what is going on during combat, there's a lot of good information in here. I kind of yapped for a little bit longer than I expected for this video, but like I said, there's a lot of good information in the guide. Be sure to check out the new player guide, which is linked in the description. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe for more content. Thank you very much for watching, and best of luck on your grinds.